When you want to know if you're leaving money on the table, you want to know it now, and you don't want to waste your valuable time into learning a different interface and to see if you can make the configuration make sense. So I created a dashboard and I call it the GA4 Must Report because it basically shows you 90% of all the valuable insights that you might want to get. So you don't need to have different dashboards, different reports, and try to configure something in order to get insights to see if you can optimize your website to increase your revenue. With this mastery report, you will have the opportunity to get those insights in a structured and clear way, so there's no room for questioning anymore. So if you don't want to waste your time with confusing configurations and different kind of reports, then be sure to watch this video till the end. Now, why should you listen to anything I have to say? Well, over the last 8 years, I've been working with more than 60 e-commerce brands to increase their stores' revenue. And what's been incredibly helpful and actually been critical in that success is to being able to dig into the data and to find out where the bottlenecks lie and what the opportunities are. If you don't know that, you're just going to try certain things and hope for the best. While if you know, hey, this is going on, this particular page has that particular problem, then you can create a fix for that problem, and therefore you can create that lift, that increasing conversion rate that you're looking for. Now, a lot of these brands, they come to me because they are feeling stuck and they don't know how to get that insights, and I make it very clear and actionable for them. And today I'm going to show you how I actually do that. So let's dive in. Okay, so first things first, when you log into your GA4, what you will need to do is to go to the admin section here, because we're going to see if you can actually use your conversion rate or you need to make some adjustments. So when you go to your admin section, you will see this screen, and then you can go to data display here and you go to key events. Now, if the only key event that you have is purchase, then you're fine. In this case, this particular brand has add to cart and begin checkout as well as a key event, and therefore their conversion rate is skewed because, of course, an add to cart is not a purchase, so that metric will not be accurate. Now, there's a way to go around this, because if you're not aware, a key event basically means a conversion. So if you're going to look at your conversion rate, then it will also take into account all the people that added something to the cart and people that have begun the checkout. They only want to purchase. Now, you can switch it off, but I would not recommend that, because you might have an ads agency that uses those key events for their targeting, for their bidding strategy in Google Ads. So just switching that off is usually not the solution and also not necessary. What you can do is you can go to custom definitions here. It's a bit lower, and let me collapse it again. And then you can go here to calculated metrics. Now, I already created here these metrics. What is important here is a conversion rate per user, or user conversion rate, however you want to call it. The difference between the two is if you create a metric, then you will see this window. Actually, just let me click here. So you can give it a name, and you can also give it a description. So in case you forgot what it is. So let's say we call this conversion rate per user. And here you can, okay, it has to be unique, of course, because I already created that. Here you can do your formula, and basically that's the number of transactions you had or the number of purchases. Please remember this, I touch upon that in a bit. The transactions that you have divided by the total users. And I usually do times 100 because the unit of measurement doesn't have a percentage yet. I don't know why, but this gives a better indication of the conversion rate. Now, as you might have seen, there are here two metrics, because what you can also do is divide this. Let me do that before I make a percentage out of it. You divide it by the transactions per purchaser. And that could be interesting if you have a lot of people that buy multiple times. So if you do this, you kind of get a more accurate percentage of how many users actually end up buying. Because if you don't take into account the transactions per purchaser, what will happen is that your conversion rate will actually be much higher than it actually is if there are a lot of double orders in there, basically for people that just bought again. If you include the transactions per purchase, you kind of only look at the unique users that actually have purchased. For most brands, this is not really important. You can add it. It won't make much of a difference. You can also just do transactions divided by the total users times 100. Right, once you do that, you can go here to explore, and you can come to this page. And there you just click here on blank. So you go to explore, you click on blank. And when you do that, you see a page like this. This might look overwhelming because there are a lot of options and configurations possible. I will walk you through it. So give it a name, look at the date range, or select here the date range that you want to look at. Segments, will cover that later. You can skip that for now. And then you go to dimensions. And what you can do here is you can click here on the plus, and you can add the dimensions that you see here. So you can type here landing page and then it already pops up. So you do landing page and landing page plus a query string if that's necessary. You can select them and then look for the next one. It will remember that you ticked them. Then device category, you click that one. Then you do session, source, medium. So that means that you can identify where people came from when they started the session. And you also do campaign because that's a specific campaign of that source medium. It will be more clear later on. So you select those as well and you do confirm. And then it will pop up here. The same thing you will do for the metrics. You click here on the plus and then you'll select here the custom metric you just made if your conversion rate was not accurate, if you had multiple key events listed in your admin section. If not, you can just type your user key event rate and you can select that one. So if you only had purchase as a key event, you can choose this one. If not, you need to create your custom one and select it here. I selected boot. Let me just keep it as it is. And then you also want your total users, sessions, actually not that important. Bounce rate, average session duration, transactions per purchaser, purchases you want. This I can remove. Gross purchase revenue and your conversion rate. Whichever you want to choose. Now, why transactions and purchases? Because we will want to see if that is the same. So you have them here and then you double click on them. And once you double click on this, it will automatically be added in this side. And once it's on this side, it will pop up here. The same for dimensions. There aren't any now, but if you double click on the dimension, it will show up here. You can also drag it if you want. That also works, but you can also just double click. It's a bit faster. So you double click on them, they'll pop up here. So we have here total users, transactions, bounce rate, conversion rate per user, average purchase revenue per active user. I don't know they're missing here, but I would definitely add those. Average purchase revenue and average purchase revenue per active user. The average session duration, this one we don't need. And your gross purchase revenue. So when you have them all here, you will see basically this. You can scroll horizontally to see the rest. GA4 needs to work a bit on their user interface because I don't know why this is blank, but that's just how it is. And then you'll have the numbers of, okay, I have had so many users in that date range, so many transactions. This was my bounce rate. Then you'll see your conversion rate per user, which is your key event rate per user, of course, if you had a correct one, your average order value basically, and what is the average user worth. So basically this shows the average order value or the average purchase revenue, what the average value is of an order that's placed. But the average purchase revenue per active user shows every user that did not immediately bounce is worth approximately £6. So that's what that means. If I can remove this, maybe I will see the last one. Yeah, average session duration is 3 minutes and gross purchase revenue is about £3 million. Okay, so you have that information and that is good to see. Okay, this is my conversion rate, that's my bounce rate, etc., etc. But you want to, of course, know what your opportunities are. So what you want to do is you want to check, okay, how does it look per device? So you select your device type, you double click here and it pops up here. And then you can see the differences between mobile and desktop. And you can see here that the bounce rate on desktop is much higher than on mobile, which is interesting. That should pique your interest because usually bounce rate is actually higher on mobile because it's a smaller screen size. It's a lot of traffic usually also that is from social and they tend to bounce a bit more. Also, when the number of users is much higher, also you have the higher chance of a bounce rate being also higher because there's less qualified traffic. So that's interesting that it is higher on desktop, but we see that the conversion rate is much higher. It's 2.69 on desktop, it's 1.77 on mobile. Average order value usually is a bit higher on desktop. It's here the case as well. But you can basically see that every desktop user is worth double as the mobile user. They also spend more time, but mobile brings you more revenue because basically there's like a huge majority is on mobile. But if you just compare that, you have 378,000 visitors on mobile and only 82,000 on desktop. But the revenue is much, much higher on desktop, right? So it's still a very important device that really should be taken into account. We don't usually look at smart TV and tablet. Those have like so little traffic, doesn't really matter much. So here you can see that you definitely have some opportunity here for mobile to improve because the conversion rate is like a lot lower than on desktop. And therefore you might want to improve that because a tiny improvement there will result in a massive increase in revenue. Now what you also will want to see is where do the people come from. So you open these again. We can remove device category here for a sec and then you can see here where do the people come from. And then we see that if you sort it by total users, you just click on total users and it will sort. But we'll see, oh, let me click again, that the vast majority comes through Google CPC, and there's also some Facebook, organic, direct, and nothing like really out of the ordinary when you see this. Although usually what you see is if mobile has so many visitors, usually that comes from Facebook or Meta or TikTok, but actually the majority actually comes from CPC. So they have a strategy apparently that a lot of it is coming through mobile. They focus a lot on mobile, which in this case you could argue like put maybe a bit more budget on desktop because that converts much better. And here you can see the bounce rate for each channel. So not set is something that Google Analytics was not able to process. There are ways to get rid of not set so you can see if it was actually Facebook or Google. The thing is that it's quite challenging to do. It's not of the scope of this video because it is quite difficult and you will never really be able to remove that. But you'll just have to accept it for now, and hopefully for you it's not that bad. But if you look at the conversion rate, at the bounce rate here, you can also see is there a certain channel that has a much higher bounce rate. If you see that, if you, for example, see that Facebook has a 80% bounce rate, you see, okay, there's clearly a disconnect between the ad that we're showing on Facebook and the experience on the website. In this case, it is not as dramatically higher. It's not like 60% or anything. So I would not necessarily worry about that. But you do see that the conversion rate is much lower. And that is not really strange because social traffic usually doesn't convert that well. It's just that, you're paying for this traffic. So you need to make sure that you actually are profitable on whatever you get through this channel. You don't want it to cost you more money than it of course generates you, because the conversion rate is not high. The average visitor that comes through Facebook is worth for you like £1.18, which is not much if you compare it to the other sources. They also spend not as much time. So there could be an opportunity to either create some more specific landing pages for people that come through social or to evaluate your campaign. Now you can go through it and see how these campaigns perform. If there are campaigns or traffic sources with a very low conversion rate, for example, the Klaviyo campaign email is converting quite low. Usually emails is supposed to be the one that converts, one of the best converting channels basically. So they're doing something not good with their Klaviyo campaigns. And you might wonder, okay, so what is the conversion rate that I should aim for? Like, should it be 2%? Should it be 3%, 4%? There is no fixed rate. It really depends on your brand, your audience. I cannot give for like a general statement of this is what your conversion rate should be, but you can really use this in checking like how they relate to each other. So if your CPC is 1.94, your direct is 2.55, then you can see that usually if Klaviyo should be higher, then 0.83 is quite low. And Facebook with these numbers is also quite low. That is something that, I've been looking at this for so many years, for so many different brands. Like every week I have a couple of audits that I go through. So I know what is normal and abnormal. I can imagine it might be a bit challenging for you. So if you need help with that, just reach out to me if you want me to look at your data. But just remember, look in how things compare to each other. If your organic is 1.6, but your CPC is 1.94, it shows that your organic search results also could be improved, because why would an ad work better on Google than your organic search results? So maybe you need to work on your meta titles. So here you can identify some weak links. Now, why this is also very important to look at is, let me pull up device category. You can add more domains if you want. Dimensions, and I put it at the top, and then I can see the traffic sources per device. Now make sure that nested rows here is set to yes, otherwise it doesn't look as neat as here. So let me see if I can. This is a bit annoying that it shows it like that, but unfortunately can't do anything much about it. So you can see here, okay, mobile gets this much of CPC, and then you can see here for desktop. So it gives you a bit of an indication. Is there a certain traffic source that performs really well on mobile but not on desktop? Now, why is this important? What has happened before when we did, for example, audits, or when we looked at our clients, is if we looked at the device performance and we would see that mobile has a lower conversion rate, sometimes much lower. Actually, recently I had one where desktop's conversion rate was much lower than mobile's, which almost never occurred. If you can see what traffic is going to those devices, it puts things into context. So what happened with that brand that I was talking to this week that had a lower desktop conversion rate is that they had a lot of affiliate traffic that was converting converting at 0.01, I think, like or 0.06, like very low, very low. And they had a lot of traffic from that only going to desktop. So that affiliate was definitely not working for them, but it lowered their conversion rate, making it think maybe if you just look at the conversion rate that your desktop performance is really poor and that you really need to improve your website on desktop. While it was just a matter of having a very poor traffic on the desktop device. Actually, when we removed that traffic source, then desktop's conversion rate was much higher than mobile, and also all the metrics look much better. So it's important that you check what traffic is going to your different devices. So let me add it back here. If you can see that something is really off, if a bounce rate is extremely high, ignoring not set here, or if the conversion rate is extremely low, it can explain why the mobile conversion rate is much lower. Now we see here Facebook paid has a low conversion rate, right? And that is going to the mobile. Well, if we go to desktop, if we scroll a bit further down, Facebook paid is on desktop only like a small percentage, and actually converts also much better. So mobile's conversion rate is also lower because of that Facebook traffic that's not really converting well. Now, if you exclude that, mobile will still convert lower than desktop, but it puts it into context that mobile is also performing lower than desktop because of the traffic that's coming there, not necessarily because of how your website looks on mobile. And it still shows that there's room for opportunity for improvement if you can improve the experience for those Facebook people. But it at least puts things into perspective. Now, what you can then also do if you want to figure out, okay, why is a certain traffic source performing poorly? Let's say you want to look at Facebook paid. You can also check the campaign that belongs to it. So here you have your CPC campaigns, and you can see how they perform and what the conversion rate is for those. And you can see that this is a branded search. So, people actually looked for that brand name. So of course it converts a bit higher. But you can see that the outdoor high is not really performing as well as the others. If you see something that's performing really poorly, you can say, okay, let's dial back on that one. If you see something that converts really well, then you can maybe double down on those. Now here you can see that the acquisition is converting quite low, but okay, that's probably because you're acquiring new people. But retargeting should therefore be much better, because those are people that have been on your site and you're retargeting them, but that's also quite low. So in that case, this should be performing much better than the acquisition. I'm not sure what advantage means, but therefore you can see how it performs. These three have the majority of the traffic, and then you can see for yourself if this makes sense and if you need to improve something. I think retargeting definitely is something that could be improved a lot looking at these metrics. So that also helps you identify which specific campaigns are maybe a bottleneck for you. All right, enough about the traffic. So we know now how to look at how devices perform, how your traffic perform, and also how your traffic influences the performance of your devices. Now you can also look at your landing pages and see, okay, if people land on a certain page, how is their experience? The thing here is, if you look at this, it's quite a lot to go through, especially if you sell a lot of products. So you have certain collection pages, some product pages. It's a lot to go through, difficult to get a clear idea. Unless you have certain pages that have just a lot of traffic, like your homepage is, for example, one of them. Of course, they get a lot of traffic. You can see, okay, what's the bounce rate there? 33% is not bad, but it's higher than average. Maybe you can work on that. Conversion rate is above average. That looks good. Your homepage should have a conversion rate higher than average, because people that see your homepage are usually people that return because they remember the URL, they come back again. So if they have a lower conversion rate when they land on your homepage, then it's probably a good opportunity for improvement. The time they spend is also good. It's about average. So the homepage, that looks decent. But you want to see, okay, so how do my average product page, how do they perform on my average collection page? Because you can look at each page individually, and that makes sense. If you, for example, only sell 10 products, you can look at like those 10 pages and see those 10 product pages individually, how they perform. But if you're selling 500 products or more, for example, that's going to be a very long journey to figure out and to improve each page individually. So what then is the best option is if you look at, okay, but how do my product pages in general perform? Because if you can make an improvement on the template level, then it will be in effect for all those product pages. So all of them will have a lift. Well, if you're going to make a change only on one product page, then it's going to not significantly move the needle unless it gets the majority of your traffic. But in a lot of cases, there are a lot of product pages or a lot of collection pages, and it's more ideal to make an optimization for the whole template of that page than just for specific products or specific collections. So I'm going to show you how you can get that insight. All right, now let's get cracking. So let me open these two columns again. And what you'll want to do is you want to see, okay, the people that land on my product page, how are they performing? Like, how well are they converting? Because if people land on my product page and they bounce immediately or they barely convert, that's a huge opportunity for improvement. And what you can even do is if your collection pages actually convert really well, you can temporarily move your traffic so that they land on your collection page instead while you optimize your product page. And then when that converts better again, you can put again your traffic to that product page so you can make the most out of the traffic that you get and that you stay more profitable or that you become more profitable. Now we need to apply some segments here. Ignore for now the ones that are here. What we're going to do is we're going to click here on the plus and we're going to create a new segment. And what we want to do is we want to create a session segment and we call it here product page and LP, meaning landing page. So we want to figure out the people that landed on the product page. Then you click here, include sessions when, and you type your landing page. And this depends on the kind of website you have, how your URL structure is. If you have a unique identifier in the URL for each product page, Shopify websites have that, for example, then you can use it here. So you can say if it contains products, which Shopify product pages do, then I want to create that. I want to capture those sessions basically. So these are all the sessions, all the people that landed on the product page. If you don't have a unique identifier, you say like, well, my collection page, for example, is furnitureshop.com/bedroom, and my product page is furnitureshop.com/bedside table or dash green. Whatever. It doesn't have a unique identifier in the URL for a product page or a collection page, then you'll probably need to use regexes. Now that warrants a whole new different video because that's quite challenging to use if you haven't used it before. If you have that problem, what I suggest is you click the link below in the description to the GA4 workshop where I go through GA4 in more detail and where you also have the opportunity to get a free GA4 training module where that is explained. So if that is in your situation that you need to use a different approach, and we call that regular expressions or regex, then you'll need to have access to that module to figure out how you can find your product pages in your segment that you're creating here. Luckily for this example, it's easy. Every URL that is a product page has products in it. So we apply that. And you would do this for every page type that you have, which is the homepage. Yes, you need also one for your homepage, even if it's just like simple URL structure, because how GA4 works right now is, if you saw it when I was applying it, let me show it again, create new segment, session segment, is that you can only choose the dimension landing page plus query string. Now, if you don't know what a query string is, it means that if someone comes through Facebook, it sometimes has something after the URL. It's like a question mark, UTM _ campaign, blah, 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 Facebook. That's called a query string. It helps Google Analytics to identify where people came from. And so your people that land on your homepage, for example, will have a URL that looks like this. And that will also be taken into account as a landing page. You can see it here. This is all like basically homepage traffic. So you want to use also a regex for that. That one I can give you now because that is basically the same for most shops. So the landing page query string should match regex, and you'll do this kind of, I don't even know what it is, like this roof with a backward slash and a $, meaning I want to capture all the pages that only has that backward slash, which is an identifier for the home page on GA4, but you want to have an or sign here, which is that straight line, and we copy this. We also want URLs, we remove the $sign here that has these like query parameters. So we do a / then, and then let me just not explain it into more detail, just follow my instructions. This question mark, a dot, and a asterisk, and apply. So we apply this, and then you have your product page landing pages. It will pull up here, and you can do this for your collection page, which for Shopify is like collections in the URL, and you can do it for your blogs. That's how it works. Use that unique identifier for those pages. What you want to do is pivot here the first row, which makes it a bit more easier to read the data. And I can remove this one, and then it's going to populate the fields. So here you can see the number of people that landed on a product page and the number of people that landed on the home page. And you can see the transactions that occurred, the bounce rate, which is not that much different, but you can see the conversion rate. The home page is much higher than our product pages. Average order value, roughly the same, but because the people on the homepage convert much better, each person that lands on the homepage is worth more. Now, I'm not saying that you should focus on making homepage a landing page for your ads, because as I said before, people that land on the homepage are usually people that also return. But if you do this for all your page type and you see, for example, that your collection pages have a conversion rate of 1.7, then you say, hey, like my product pages are really lacking behind. I need to improve that page because that's a low conversion rate. If, for example, your bounce rate would be 50% and your other bounce rates of the other page types of your collection pages of your homepage would be like much lower, then you say, hey, my product page really needs improvement. It could also be that your collection page is actually the odd one out and you really need to improve those. So this helps you to identify what page type is going to need the most of your attention. And it's important to also look at the number of users that there are. If you notice, for example, that your blogs have a poor performance, now trust me, blogs usually have a low conversion rate, and that's because they're not there for like a purchase intent. That's for informational purposes. But let's say you want your blog to really convert well, but you have these numbers and you see that like 400 people land on the blog. That's not really going to be a priority for you because that's only a small subset of people that actually focuses or sees your blog. So even if, for example, here the collection pages would perform poorly, like maybe they have a conversion rate of 1% and bounce rate of 70, but they're only landing, let me say, like 300 people on the collection page, you might wonder, should that be my priority? For e-commerce stores, it might be, because people will browse through your site and they will see your collection page. They might not land on it, but they will definitely see it. But it is commonly more important to focus on the page that has the most first impressions, the most people that land on it, and see how that performs. In this case, product page is probably going to be, for this brand, an important page to focus on. All right, and finally, once you have that insight, it's also interesting to see how people go through your website and where, like in the process, there is a bottleneck. Now what you can do, let me show you how this one looks, is you create a segment the same way as for the landing pages, but you don't choose landing page, you choose here page path and screen class. Now what does this do? This doesn't look at the people that landed on the page, but just at the number of people that have come across this page. And that is also important to see. So if you see, for example, here, actually, let me add another segment, all users, so just everyone that has been on your page. Let me add that one. And that is here, all users. So you can see here, this website had 464,000 users. And then we see, okay, how many people that actually saw a product page. And that's interesting because if barely anyone sees a product page, you see, okay, that's a problem for us. We need to make sure that more people actually see a product page. Here you can see that this brand does a decent job in getting people on the product page. Now it's also the case here that the product page is their top landing page. I think it had like 360,000 people landing on the product page. So in this case, it does make sense. But I have seen cases where there had been like 100,000 people on the website, but only 30,000 saw a product page. So if only 30% sees a product page, of course, people are not going to buy because they barely land in a product page. They need to do a better job at your navigation, at your collection pages, to motivate people to actually go to a product page, to help them get to a product that they like. So that's going to be then very crucial. Now, what you also will want to see is how many people of those actually add something to the cart. Let me show it in a second. But you also can, this is a cart page that you can pull up, but it doesn't mean that they actually added something to the cart. And that's going to be also difficult if you have a drawer cart. Like if you don't have a designated page, you cannot look at it necessarily. But you can see not a lot of people end up in the cart. And you can do the same for the checkout. So if you make a segment here, and I have too many segments, I need to remove some. Let me edit this one. So if I want to see how many people actually landed in the checkout or saw a checkout, sorry, let me apply that. Checkout, apply. Now I'm not that great at math from my head, but I can see that if so many people landed in the cart and 50,000 people landed in the checkout, that is something that, you know, it is, what is it, like 60%? It is not bad. It's not awesome either. Unless if you add something to the cart, you immediately land in the cart, then it's a good rate. But if people consciously have to go to the cart, you want that rate to be a little bit higher. Now, how can you figure out how many people add something to the cart? Now, I would recommend put this in an Excel, these numbers, so you can check the rates that there are, because the add to cart, you need to find that in a different way. You need to get the dimension here of the event name. So let me type here event name. Here, you want to add that. Then we remove also here the segments to make it a bit easier to see. Get here the event name. And then we can see how many users added something to the cart. Now I went a bit too fast for GA4. That can sometimes happen. Okay. And then we look for the add to cart. Now there were 28,000, let's say 29,000 people adding something to the cart. So let me get back to where we were. Then we get the product page. Then we get this one and the cart. So remember, 29,000 people added something to the cart, but again, too fast. Let me remove the cart and add it back. And of course I need to do first row here. So 29,000 added something to the cart. That means that 23,000 actually, after adding something to the cart, went to the cart. That's a high rate. If 29,000 people added something to the cart and 23,000 people actually ended up to the cart, it makes me almost think that you automatically get redirected to the cart, because it's a high rate and there's just some discrepancy there when maybe GA4 didn't get some data. But that would definitely be a decent rate. But we can calculate quickly how many people actually ended up in the cart after being on the product page. So let's take the add to cart number. So if you my calculator, let's say there was 29,000 people adding something to the cart, but there were this amount of people. So you can see, okay, about 7% of the people that saw a product page added something to the cart. Might look low, but in my experience, if it's between 7 or 10, you're doing decent. If it's lower than 7%, you have a problem. So they are like just about sufficient. Not awesome, but not something that I would say hold your horses. That's something that we need to focus on. All right, so kind of to conclude here, you know now how to identify how your devices are performing, your mobile and desktop mainly, your traffic sources and how that impacts your mobile and desktop's conversion rate, how your landing pages are performing and where you should focus on first, and also where people like drop off in the funnel, how people go from the homepage, or like in general, how people that land on your website, how many see a product page, how many of those people add something to the cart, and how many people then see the cart and go to the checkout. And if you see somewhere a big drop off, then you know that's the part in the journey where you need to focus on. So with this report and with these findings, you will uncover the majority of the bottlenecks and opportunities that you have. These are the most common things that you can find and that you can optimize for. Now, if you feel like you need some help identifying that, or like putting context to the numbers because you might not know what is a good conversion rate or bounce rate, and you need some help to figure that out, then click the first link in the description to book a free call with me today, and I will help you go through the data and to give context to that and help you identify your opportunities and your bottlenecks. And once you do that, be sure to check this video to see how you can improve your mobile landing page.